right? So you know how annoying it is when you're out taking pictures. You've got this like amazing scene, right? Perfect light.
Yeah.
Composition's awesome.
Yeah.
You get back home, look at the photos on your computer, and the colors are just all wrong.
Yeah. It's
like, what happened?
It's so frustrating, especially when you're like really trying to get that like what you see is what you get look.
Yeah.
Because our eyes are so good at adjusting to different lighting.
Right.
You don't even realize how much work they're doing.
And just do it automatically.
Exactly.
Yeah, and cameras, even like the fancy ones,
yeah,
still kind of struggle with that whole color accuracy thing.
they do.
And I think a big part of that is white balance.
Right.
So we're going deep today on a possible solution to this problem.
Right.
It's called the Raynauld Directional Color Calibration Filter.
Okay.
DCC for short.
DCCs.
Okay. But before we get into that, let's talk about like why white balance is such a pain.
Okay, sure.
In the first place.
So think about all the different kinds of light that we see every day, right? You've got sunlight, fluorescent lights, tungsten bulbs, LEDs.
Yeah.
They all have like a different color temperature.
Right.
Which basically means that they emit different wavelengths of light.
Yeah, so like daylight's kind of cooler, right?
Exactly.
Kind of bluish.
Especially like around midday.
Yeah.
That's why like photos taken at noon sometimes look so like cold.
Yeah.
Almost sterile.
Sterile, yeah.
But then on the other hand, you've got like incandescent bulbs. Those emit a warmer, more yellowish light.
Right.
It makes things look kind of cozy.
Yeah.
Nostalgic.
And our cameras, they try their best, right? They
Okay.
try to compensate for all these different color temperatures with automatic white balance.
Yeah.
Or AWB.
AWB.
But we all know it's not perfect.
No, it's definitely not foolproof.
Right.
It really struggles in mixed lighting situations, like when you have daylight and artificial light at the same time, or it might just like misinterpret the scene altogether.
Right.
And then you get those weird color casts that can just ruin a photo.
Totally.
Like skin tones might look too yellow. Skies are way too blue.
Yeah.
Foliage has this like unnatural green tint.
Right, like it's almost
like the camera's wearing like color tinted glasses or something.
Yeah, yeah, and that brings us to the DCC filter.
Okay.
Which is supposed to be like a more reliable way to get accurate color.
Interesting.
I'm curious about this thing because it's not like just another filter, you know?
Yeah.
Like slap it on your lens and forget about it.
Right.
The research we have here talks about how it's designed differently.
Okay.
And how it like tackles white balance in a different way.
All right, so how's it different from like using a gray card?
Yeah, so traditional gray cards can be helpful for setting white balance, but they have their issues.
Okay, what kind of issues?
Well, they can be affected by light contamination from other light sources.
So the light reflecting off the gray card might not be the same as the light that's actually hitting your subject.
Exactly.
Which can mess up the white balance.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
And that's where the DCC's design comes in.
Okay.
So instead of being like a flat surface that reflects light from every direction, it's got this like special directional and localized light gathering system.
Ooh, fancy.
Right.
So can you explain that a little more? I'm looking at the diagram here. It kind of looks like a little cup or a hood that you attach to the lens.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
Like imagine it's giving your camera tunnel vision.
Okay.
So it's only collecting light from like a very specific area.
So it's blocking out all that extra light from the sides?
Exactly.
That's pretty clever.
Right. So it's minimizing the impact of all that other light that can mess with the color reading.
So it's like it's creating a controlled environment just for color calibration.
Yeah. Like a little color lab.
I like it.
Right on your lens.
Yeah.
And there are these 5 photos in this research taken with a Sony a6600 and a bunch of different lenses, just to show how lens color casts can be a problem.
Okay.
Each picture is of the same scene, but they all have like slightly different colors.
It's like each lens has its own personality or something.
Yeah. It's kind of cool when you think about it.
It is kind of cool.
But also kind of annoying.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get the colors right.
Right. Because you want consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what the DCC is supposed to help with.
Yeah. So it's trying to give your camera like a much better starting point.
Okay.
For white balance.
I see.
By like cutting out that light contamination and giving it like a really precise reading of the scene's average color temperature.
So it's helping your camera see the colors more like your eyes do.
Yeah, basically.
Interesting.
And the difference is pretty obvious in the comparison shots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they show this one picture with these jeans.
Okay.
And in the AWB photo, they look super yellow.
Oh, wow.
But in the DCC version, they look way more natural.
Okay, so it's correcting for the color cast?
Yeah, from both the lighting and the lens.
That's pretty impressive.
Right. And there's this other picture with like a really bright roof.
Okay.
It's all blown out in the AWB shot.
Uh-huh.
But in the DCC version, it looks way more balanced.
So it's like saving those details in the highlights.
Exactly.
Goal.
So I'm starting to see how this could be like a game changer.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how you'd actually use this thing.
Okay, yeah. Let's get practical.
Like, walk me through it.
All right, so you attach the DCC to your lens.
Uh-huh.
Set your camera to manual white balance.
Okay.
Then point the camera at your scene.
Right.
And take a picture with the DCC on.
Okay.
Then you take the DCC off
Uh-huh.
and start shooting.
And the camera just uses that first picture.
Yep, it uses that first picture to set the white balance for all the other photos.
Okay, so it's kind of like setting a reference point.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But you do have to recalibrate if the lighting changes a lot.
Right, that makes sense.
But the process itself is pretty quick.
Okay, so this thing only works with certain cameras, or is it more versatile?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me in the research was that the DCC works with a bunch of different cameras.
Oh, wow.
DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, even iPhones.
Seriously? iPhones?
Yeah, they all seem to work with it.
That's really cool.
It is pretty cool.
So it's kind of like a universal translator for color.
I like that.
It's helping your camera speak the same language as your eyes.
Exactly.
No matter what camera you're using.
That's a great way to put it.
And it just shows how important the fundamentals of light and color still are.
Yeah, even with all the fancy cameras and editing software we have nowadays.
Totally. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about technical stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture. Like, in a world where we can edit colors however we want, is getting true color even necessary anymore?
That's a good question.
Right.
It is a really interesting question.
Or is it more about just creating a certain look?
Yeah, like an aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of what's actually real.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
I think a lot of photographers are wrestling with that these days.
Yeah, for sure.
We have all these tools that let us create any look we want.
Right.
But I still think there's value in understanding how to get accurate color. Even if you end up changing it later.
Yeah.
It's like having a solid foundation to build on.
I like that. A good foundation.
Right.
Yeah. So you know what true color looks like, and then you can decide how you want to tweak it to create a certain mood or style.
Exactly.
And sometimes, like in portraits or product photography, accuracy is really important.
Absolutely. You want skin tones to look natural.
Yeah.
Products to look like they do in real life.
Right. And that's where something like the DCC could be really useful.
It could be a real time saver.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I thought was really cool about this research
about that.
is that they actually included some raw files.
Oh, wow.
For people to download and look at.
Really?
Yeah, so you can actually see.
So you can see for yourself.
Yeah, how the DCC is affecting the image data.
That's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah, it's like they're giving you the keys to the laboratory and saying, go ahead, experiment.
See what you discover.
I love that.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the DCC and how it can help with color accuracy.
We have.
But we've also kind of opened up this bigger conversation about the role of color in photography.
Right. Is it about getting it right?
Yeah.
Or is it about using it expressively?
That's something we'll keep talking about in part 2 of this deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Right. It's funny how something like color calibration can lead to all these like philosophical questions.
Right. It's deep.
Yeah, like, is there even such a thing as true color in a photo?
It's a good question.
Or is it all just subjective?
Yeah, I think that's what makes this so interesting. It's not just about like the technical stuff.
Right.
It's about like the meaning of color.
Yeah, the impact it has on the viewer.
Exactly, like how it makes us feel.
Right. How it tells a story.
Yeah, and even like how it affects what we think is real.
And all that can be different for different people.
Totally, like our backgrounds, our preferences.
Yeah, even like the time of day can make a difference.
Oh, for sure. Like think about golden hour photos.
Oh, yeah, those are classic.
Right. That warm light makes everything look amazing.
It's magical.
But it's not really accurate, is it?
Not really. It's more of an interpretation.
Right. It's a choice the photographer makes.
To evoke a certain feeling.
Exactly. And that's where things get blurry.
Yeah, like where does technical accuracy end
Right.
and artistic expression begin?
We have tools like the DCC to help us get the colors right. But in the end, it's up to the photographer.
Yeah, to decide how they want to use color.
To tell their story.
It's like having a really nice chef's knife.
Okay, I like that.
You can use it to do amazing things, but it's still up to the chef
to create the dish.
Exactly.
So it's like technology versus artistry.
Yeah, a perfect way to describe it.
We have amazing tools,
right,
but it's still our vision.
Our understanding of color.
That makes the picture come alive.
And that vision can be influenced by so many things.
Oh, totally. Like, think about art history.
Mm-hmm.
Certain colors have always meant certain things.
Right, and those meanings can change over time.
Yeah, or across different cultures.
Exactly, like blue.
Okay.
It usually means calm and peaceful, at least in the West.
Right.
But in some Eastern cultures, it can mean sadness or mourning.
So even if you get the colors technically accurate, people might see them differently.
It all depends on the context.
Right. Which brings us back to that question.
That big question.
Is true color even possible?
Or is it more about finding a balance
between what's real and what we interpret?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Right. There's the science of color.
The wavelengths and all that.
Right, and how our brains see them.
But then there's the cultural stuff, too.
Yeah, and the artistic stuff.
So maybe it's not about finding the absolute truth.
Maybe it's more about understanding the tools.
And the techniques.
Yeah, so we can express our own vision.
I think you nailed it.
Photography is all about communication.
Right. We're using light and color.
To tell stories.
To make people feel something.
To share how we see the world.
And now with digital photography. And all the editing software.
We have so much control over color.
More than ever before.
It's like having an infinite painter's palette.
Right. We can make the colors look however we want.
Hyper-realistic, surreal, anything.
But that comes with responsibility.
It does.
We have to think about how those color choices affect the message we're sending.
Right. And how people might see it.
It's not just about making a pretty picture.
It's about understanding the power of color.
And using it in a way that's meaningful.
That makes people think.
And that brings us back to the DCC filter.
Okay.
Even though it's designed for accuracy.
Yeah.
I can see how it could be used creatively, too.
Oh, totally.
Like by giving you a neutral starting point, it lets you experiment with color.
More intentionally.
Yeah, like with more control.
It's like having a blank canvas.
Okay.
Versus one that's already painted.
I see what you're saying.
You can always paint over something.
Right.
But sometimes starting fresh gives you more freedom.
And that choice is what makes a photographer's style unique.
Exactly. Do they like things realistic or abstract?
Or somewhere in between?
The DCC can work for all of those.
That's like a secret weapon. Yeah. You can use it for accuracy.
Or to get really creative with color.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me?
Yeah, what's that?
Was the part about light contamination. And how it affects gray cards.
Right, it's something you don't always think about.
No, but it makes sense.
Yeah, if the light hitting the gray card is mixed with colors from other things, it's going to mess up the reading.
It's like trying to taste pure water.
Okay.
When you've got like a strong flavor in your mouth.
I get it. You can't really tell.
Yeah, your perception is off.
And that's why the DCC is so cool.
Right. It blocks out all that extra stuff.
Yeah, it's like noise-canceling headphones.
So if you're your camera.
It's only letting in the light from the scene.
So you get a clean color reading.
It's all about understanding light.
And how it interacts with the world.
It's a basic idea, but it's easy to forget.
Yeah, when you get caught up in all the other stuff.
The technical stuff, the artistic stuff.
It's like forgetting the foundation.
Of the whole thing.
And the DCC kind of brings us back to that.
Back to the basics.
It's a reminder that the laws of physics.
They still matter.
Even with all the digital technology.
It's a beautiful mix of science and art.
Right. We have the science of color and light.
But it's the art.
That turns it into a photograph.
Speaking of art.
Yeah.
The article mentioned a problem for smartphone photographers.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Finding enough white in a scene.
Oh, right. For white balance.
Yeah. iPhones are great. But they don't always give you as much control.
Over white balance.
Yeah. And if there's not enough white in the scene, the automatic stuff can struggle.
It's like trying to describe the taste of salt.
Okay.
Without ever having tasted it.
You might have an idea.
But you wouldn't be accurate.
And that's where the DCC comes in handy.
Even for smartphones.
It gives the phone a reference point.
It's like a salt taste test.
Exact.
So it knows what white should look like.
And then it can capture colors more accurately.
Even in tough lighting.
And that brings up a really important point.
Okay, what's that?
About how our brains see color. We don't even realize how much our brains are adjusting.
For different lighting.
Like we see a white object as white, no matter what kind of light it's in.
Right.
But cameras can't do that.
They need help.
They do.
It's like needing a translator.
To understand a foreign language.
And the DCC is like that translator.
Helping the camera see color like we do.
That's a great way to put it.
So getting accurate color in photography.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's a challenge.
It's not just about the technology.
It's about the science of light.
The psychology of perception.
And the art of making it all look good.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's also really rewarding.
It is.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm just amazed by how complex and beautiful color is.
It really is.
We see it every day, but there's so much to it.
So much to explore.
So for everyone listening, keep exploring, keep experimenting.
And keep asking questions.
Because in the world of color,
there's always something new to discover.
We'll be back soon to wrap up this deep dive into the world of color in photography. Welcome back. It's amazing how this conversation about color have gone, way beyond just the technical stuff.
Yeah, it's been pretty deep.
We've talked about how our brains see color, how culture affects it.
Right?
And even how photographers use color to tell stories.
It's a big topic.
Yeah. And it makes you realize why so many photographers are obsessed with getting color, right?
It's not just about the technical skill.
Yeah, it's like a deeper understanding
of how color affects us.
Right, and how we can use it to express ourselves.
Exactly.
I remember that part in the DCC article.
Yeah.
Where they said true color isn't always the goal.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's better to tweak things a bit.
Right. Even if it's not exactly how our eyes saw it.
Sometimes a little shift in color can make a photo way more impactful.
Totally. Think about portraits.
Okay.
Warming up the tones a bit.
Yeah.
Makes it feel more intimate.
More inviting.
Right. Or landscapes. Cooling down the colors.
It creates a sense of peacefulness.
Like a sense of calm.
It's like the difference between a news report and a novel.
Interesting.
They can both be about the same thing.
Right.
But the novel uses its own style.
To tell the story.
Exactly. And that's the power of photography, too.
We have the tools to be super accurate, but it's our choices that shape the final image.
And those choices come from, all sorts of places.
Right, our personal taste.
Yeah, the message we want to get across.
Yeah.
Even who we're making the picture for.
It all plays a role.
A fashion photographer might use really bright colors.
Yeah, to make things pop.
Right. But a photojournalist might want more neutral colors.
To show things as they really are.
It's crazy how even tiny color changes can change how we feel about a picture.
They did this study where they showed people the same photo, but with slightly different colors. The warmer photos, people thought they were more welcoming.
Right. But the cooler photos seemed more distant.
More formal.
It's wild how much color affects us without us even realizing it.
Subconsciously.
It shows that color isn't just decoration.
Right. It's part of the story.
It's how we communicate.
So I think what we've learned here is that mastering color, it's more than just the technical stuff.
It's about understanding how it makes us feel.
And making choices that fit our vision.
Beautifully put.
It's a journey.
Keep learning. Keep experimenting.
Don't be afraid to try new things.
Find your own style.
Because photography is all about
capturing how we see the world.
Not just what we see.
But how we feel about it.
And color's a huge part of that.
It's the language of emotions.
I think that's a great place to wrap things up.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
From white balance to color psychology.
And everything in between.
But most importantly, I hope we've inspired you.
To keep exploring color.
And to keep taking amazing pictures.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.